It's often heard that the UN system is paralyzed and in crisis. This has become commonplace. Some even claim it has outlived itself and needs at least radical reform. Yes, undoubtedly, there are many problems in the UN's work, many indeed, but there is still nothing better than the UN. This must also be acknowledged. The problem is not with the UN, as its potential capabilities are vast. The real question is how we, the so-called united, but unfortunately now divided, nations use these opportunities. There's no denying the UN faces challenges. Like any organization today, it needs to adapt to changing realities. I won't deny that there is no consensus on how the world should be organized, on what principles it should be based in the coming years and decades. We have entered a prolonged period of search, movement in many ways by touch. The current administration of the White House proclaims its interests and desires directly. Sometimes, I think you will agree with me, even straightforwardly, but without any undue hypocrisy. I always prefer to clearly understand what my interlocutor wants, what they are striving for, rather than trying to guess the real meaning in a series of equivocations, ambiguous and vague hints. We see that today's U.S. administration is primarily guided by the interests of its own side, as they understand it. I think this is a rational approach. But then, excuse us, Russia also reserves the right to be guided by our national interests, one of which, by the way, is the restoration of full-fledged relations with the USA. And no matter the contradictions, if we treat each other with respect, then negotiations, even the toughest, most persistent ones, will still aim to come together, meaning that in the end, mutually acceptable solutions are possible. Through all the trials, Russia has proven one thing. It is, and always will be. Its role in the world is changing. We understand this, but it remains invariably a force, without which it's difficult, and often impossible, to achieve harmony or balance. This proven fact, a fact tested by the history of time, is an unconditional fact. But in today's multipolar world, this harmony, this balance I spoke of, can undoubtedly be achieved only through joint common work. And I want to assure you, Russia is ready for such work. The interests of countries never fully align, and the whole history of international relations is undoubtedly a struggle for their realization. However, the fundamentally new global atmosphere and the tone increasingly set by the countries of the global majority allow us to hope that all players will have to consider each other's interests in developing and resolving regional and global issues. After all, essentially, no one can achieve their goals alone, in isolation from the rest. The world, despite the intensification of conflicts, the crisis of the previous model of globalization, and the fragmentation of the world economy, remains integral, interconnected, and interdependent. We know this from our own experience. You know how much effort our opponents have put in recent years to, frankly speaking, expel Russia from the world system, to push us into political, cultural, informational isolation, and economic autarky. By the number and volume of punitive measures taken against us, which are bashfully called sanctions, Russia is an absolute record holder in world history. 30, or maybe even more, various restrictions. But have you achieved your goal? I think present here do not need an explanation that these efforts have completely failed. Russia has shown the world the highest degree of resilience, the ability to withstand the strongest external pressure, which could break not only an individual country but a whole coalition of states. And we naturally feel legitimate pride in this regard, pride for Russia, for our citizens, and for our armed forces. But I want to say not only this. It turned out that the very world system they wanted to push us out of simply does not let Russia go because Russia is necessary for it as a very significant part of the overall balance. And not only because of its territory, population, defense, technological, and industrial potential, or its natural resources. Although, of course, everything I listed now is very, very important. These are the most important factors. But above all, because the world balance without Russia cannot be constructed economically, strategically, culturally, or logistically in any way. I think those who tried to destroy all this have just realized it. Some, however, stubbornly hope to still achieve their goal, to inflict what they call strategic defeat on Russia. Well, if they do not see the futility of this plan and persist, well, still hope that life will show, and it will reach the most stubborn slowpokes. It seems they have already buzzed, threatened with complete blockades, tried to force the people of Russia, as they express themselves, with a word they picked without hesitation, wanted to make the people of Russia suffer. They built plans, each more fantastic than the other. It seems to me it is time to calm down, look around, understand the realities, and somehow establish relations in a completely different direction. Due to this complexity of the world, the overall negotiability, in my opinion, tends to increase. After all, linear and one-sided solutions are impossible, and non-linear and multilateral solutions require very serious, professional, impartial, creative, sometimes unconventional diplomacy. Therefore, I am convinced we will witness a kind of renaissance, the revival of high diplomatic art, and its essence is in the ability to conduct dialogue and negotiate both with neighbors and like-minded individuals, and, which is no less important but more difficult, with opponents. Notice how Europe is sliding to the periphery of global competition. We know perfectly well how all threats concerning Russia's aggressive plans, which Europe frightens itself with, are unfounded. I just said about this, but self-suggestion is a dangerous thing, and we simply cannot ignore what is happening. We do not have a right to do this out of considerations of ensuring our own security. I repeat, our defense and security. Therefore, we closely monitor the growing militarization of Europe. Are these just words, or is it time for us to take countermeasures? We hear, you know about this. The Federal Republic of Germany, for example, says that the German army should again be the most powerful in Europe. Well, okay, we listen carefully, watching what is meant. I think no one doubts that such measures will not make Russia. Countermeasures will not take long to come. The counter-threat seems, to put it mildly, very convincing, will be very convincing. Precisely the response. We ourselves have never initiated military confrontation. If someone still has a desire to compete with us in the military sphere, as we say, to each his own, let them try. Russia has repeatedly proven that when there is a threat to our security, peace, and tranquility of our citizens, to our sovereignty and the very statehood, we respond quickly. Quickly. There is no need to provoke. There has never been a case that this, in the end, did not end badly for the provocateur. There is no need to wait for exceptions in the future. There will not be any. The unlimited thirst for power of those who, after the Cold War, consider themselves victors led, as I have said repeatedly, to the desire to impose subjective unilateral security ideas on everyone. This is, in fact, what has become the real underlying root cause of not only the Ukrainian but also many other acute conflicts of the 21st decade of the 21st century. As a result, as we warned, today no one feels secure. It is time to return, so to speak, to the origins to correct the mistakes made. But the indivisibility of security today, compared to the late 80s and early 90s of the last century, is an even more complex phenomenon. It is no longer just about the military-political balance and consideration of mutual interests. The security of humanity depends on its ability to respond to challenges posed by natural and man-made disasters. There are no ready-made answers here, but I believe that, first of all, to solve global problems, it is necessary to approach them without ideological bias, without didactic pathos in the spirit of, let me explain to you how it should be. And secondly, it is important to realize that this is truly a common, indivisible endeavor requiring the joint work of all countries and peoples. Every culture and civilization must make its contribution because, I repeat, separately, no one knows the right answer. It can only emerge in conditions of joint constructive search. Unification, not division of efforts and national experiences of different states. I return to what President Trump said. He said that if he were in power, this could have been avoided. I agree with that. Indeed, this could have been avoided if the work with the then Biden administration had been structured differently with us. If Ukraine had not been turned into a destructive tool in foreign hands, if the North Atlantic bloc had not been used for this other countries, for them, the situation in this case in Ukraine is a card in another, much larger game and in their own game, and, as a rule, not even related to the specific problems of the country in question. In this case, this particular country and countries involved in the conflict. This is only an excuse and a way to solve their geopolitical tasks, to expand their zone of control and make a little money off the war. That's why they crept to our doorstep with NATO infrastructure, indifferently watching for years the tragedy of Donbass, the genocide, in essence, and destruction of Russian people in our native historical territories, which began in 2014 after a bloody coup in Ukraine. In contrast to such behavior, which Europe demonstrates, and until recently the United States under the previous administration, are the actions of the world majority. They refuse to take sides, endeavoring to genuinely help establish a just peace. We are grateful to all states who sincerely made efforts in recent years to find a way out of the situation. These are our partners founders of BRICS, China, India, Brazil, South Africa. This is Belarus. This is, by the way, North Korea. These are our friends in the Arab, Islamic world as a whole, primarily Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, Iran, Serbia, Hungary, Slovakia in Europe, and many other countries, African and Latin American. And while, unfortunately, it has not yet been possible to cease hostilities, the responsibility for this does not lie with the majority for failing to stop it, but on the minority, primarily on Europe, which constantly escalates the conflict. And, in my opinion, no other goal is visible there today. Nevertheless, I think good must prevail. And in this sense, there is not the slightest doubt. I believe that even in Ukraine, changes are gradually occurring. We see this no matter how people's minds are swayed there. It's unlikely that I can formulate instructions, nor is there a need for it, because all instructions and advice are asked for and given only to not be followed later. The space of multipolarity is very dynamic. Changes happen quickly, as I already mentioned, and sometimes unexpectedly, almost overnight. It's very difficult to prepare for them, and sometimes they are impossible to predict. Reaction must be immediate, as they say, in real time. We need to find points of contact and alignment of interests. Nobody is ready anymore to play by the rules set by someone else and somewhere far away, as a well-known chanson singer from our country sang, over the mists or over the oceans. International relations undergoing a radical transformation. Paradoxically, multipolarity has become a direct consequence of attempts to establish and maintain global hegemony. It's an answer from the international system and history itself to the obsessive desire to line everyone up in one hierarchy with Western countries at the top. The failure of such a venture was only a matter of time, as we, incidentally, always said. We all had a real chance for another positive vector of development in international relations, but unfortunately, the upper hand took a different approach. Western countries couldn't resist the temptation of absolute power. Well, it's a serious temptation. To resist this temptation, one needed to have such a historical perspective in mind and a good level of preparation, including intellectual and historical preparation. Those who were making decisions back then apparently didn't have such preparation. Yes, the power of the USA and its allies reached a peak in the late 20th century, but there is no and will be no force capable of ruling the world, dictating to everyone what to do and how to breathe. Such things have never existed. Attempts were made, but they all ended in failure. The global governance institutions created in the past era either work or don't work at all and have significantly lost their effectiveness. However much potential an individual country or group of countries accumulates, every power has its limit. Well, the Russian audience knows there's a saying in our country, there's no taking on a crowbar except with another crowbar, and it always appears, you understand, that's the essence of events happening in the world. It always appears. In society's leading Western European states, a clear rejection of the excessive ambitions of the political elite in these countries has matured and is growing stronger. The barometer of public opinion shows this everywhere. The establishment does not want to give up power, resorts to outright deception of its own citizens, heightens the situation on the external front, takes any means within their countries, often on the brink or beyond the brink of law, but endlessly turning democratic electoral procedures into a farce, manipulating the will of the people, will not work. Just like it happened in Romania. For example, we won't go into details. This happens in many countries. In some countries, they try to ban their political opponents, who have already gained greater legitimacy and more trust from the voters. Ban them. We know this. Went through it in the Soviet Union. Remember Vysotski's song? They even banned the military parade. Soon everything will be banned. But it doesn't work. Bans don't work. the submission of the majority to the minority, inherent in international relations during the dominance of Western countries, is giving way to a multilateral, more cooperative approach. Its foundation lies in the agreements of leading players and taking into account everyone's interests. This, of course, doesn't guarantee harmony and absolute conflictlessness. Countries' interests never fully coincide, and the whole history of international relations is definitely a struggle for their realization, and how much effort our opponents have put in. I 4 to 5 minutes before I sometimes stand. I question completely specific issues that need to be resolved in one or another part of the world. Well, and in the olden days, when there was a Soviet Union, one side and another side, well, something inside the bloc agreed and it went. No, I'm telling you the truth, and this is my experience and has happened in practice several times. I think, should I do this or that? And then I think, no, that's not right, because it will affect these people. It is better that way. And then I say, no, if this is the way, this is how I will act, it will impact these people. Look, really, and really, to be honest, there have been a few cases that we have not done anything at all. Because, to be honest, the damage to the world will be greater than the simply withdrawal and suffering. Alexander I was the emperor while I was elected president at a certain time. This make a big difference. Secondly, Alexander I united Europe with his forces. We had defeated the enemy that has invaded our territory. I was told not so long ago that we are in the marker of the Russian tradition. Young girls come to parades or to bars with howls and Russian dresses. There's no joke about it. It makes me really happy, because it means that despite all attempt to spread Russian society from the inside, our enemies do not achieve any results, and vice versa. It is expected to return, without further notice. And the fact that young people have this kind of internal protection from attempts to influence the public consciousness from the inside, this is a very good thing. It speaks of the maturity and strength of the Russian society. And the unmanned system, and it is in the air in all three syndicals and in the market, both on land and on water. There are unmanned and crew boats, land-based platforms, and unmanned aerial vehicles. And all of that has a double function. It is changing the tactics, weak armored combat, and much more is changing when it comes to battlefields. Now, there is no more clinging to Guderian and fishing, as in World War II, but tanks are used in a completely different way now to do nothing but deter en masse and break enemy defenses and to keep military personnel from closed positions. It's necessary too, but it is a little different. But most importantly, you know what? The speed at which these changes are occurring. Many things change in 1 month, in 1 week. I have many times said that we are using something. Then again, the use of extensive weaponry, especially of high range, which is also an important component today, becomes less effective. Why? Because they use the latest IEP systems. They realize what is happening and adapt. So we need to find countermeasures over the next few days or weeks. This is happening constantly, which is very important, both on the battlefield and in research centers. These are the modern changes and serious innovations in modern armed struggle. Everything is changing except for one thing: courage, bravery, and heroism of the Russian soldiers. We are all very proud of it. We are too late. We didn't really see some things. This is not what we wanted to do, but didn't have time to do so. No, we didn't really see some things. This is not what we wanted to do, but didn't have time to do so. No, we didn't really see some things. It's probably made sense, but it sounds a little aggressive. As for the Ministry of War, we have a Ministry of Defense. We have always been and will always be one. We have no aggressive intentions towards third countries. Our defense ministry and our defense ministry's objective is to ensure the safety of the Russian state and peoples of the Russian Federation. Almost 100% of Lugansk Oblast remains under our control, while 0.13% of the total territory that the enemy controls are in our hands. The other 24 to 25% are from the Zaporozhye region and the IEI and Kherson region. And I would like to underline that the Russian soldiers are certain to maintain their strategic initiative everywhere. But if we are fighting with our entire NATO bloc, and we advance like this, feel confident. And, well, this paper tiger, What then is NATO? What then does it represent? But together with China, the most important thing for us is to be confident in ourselves, and we are confident in ourselves. Thank you. Here are paper tigers that are used as baby toys. If you are going to meet President Trump, give them a gift. Well, we have our own relations with him. We know what to give each other. We are very calm about this. There is no time for preparation. Our troops advance every day. Do you understand what it's about? They do not have time to strengthen their bases nor to prepare their personnel, nor do they have time to lose more than to be able to replenish personnel on the battlefield. That's what it is. So it would be better for the Kiev leadership to think about making a deal. Of course, we also have losses, but they are many times less than the infliction of the Russian Union. Do you realize the difference? We have the guys who come to the BB and enroll themselves in the army. They are essentially volunteers. We are not a team of volunteers. We are not hosting any massive, and even more, forced mobilization, as it happens in the Kiev regime. Why did I say so? I did not invent it. Believe me, this is objective data, and the Westerners confirm it. From January through August, 150,000 deserters were killed. Why? But why? Well, people are caught from the streets. They are running. They are doing the right thing, and I urge them to flee. Because we urge them to surrender to captivity. But it is difficult to surrender to captivity because gaolers or detainees will destroy them when they see someone trying to surrender. Or they will be destroyed by the drones, and allowed by the drones taken by mercenaries from all over the world. They do not care about Ukrainians. They destroy them and that's it. On the other hand, the U.S. Army is just an ordinary peasant worker in Ukraine. The elite doesn't fight. They just send their people to be slaughtered. That's why so many people deserted their homes. We have people who often voluntarily wait in twits across their backs onto Russia's border. But compared to what is happening there, only a few of them are doing it. You see, only a few, and there's mass order at work.
Но таких по сравнению с тем, что там происходит, единицы. Понимаете, единицы. А там массовый порядок.